items are one of the most important things in Dungeons & Dragons. And what separates Dungeons & Dragons from being a regular old role-playing game to actually enacting its way in magic in general. And so that's why magic items are very, very important. And the player's handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, modules like Avernus, Tyranny of Dragons, stuff like that, all have amazing examples of magic items that we can use. However, some of my favorite magic items actually are stuff that either I have homebrewed myself or that I have seen other people homebrew. And today I'm going to be going over my top 10, my personal top 10 favorite magic items from the Griffon's Saddlebag homebrew set, specifically Volume 1. Starting off with my top 10 in Volume 1 is a common magic item. It is a wondrous item called the Singing Stein. Now, I'll go ahead and I'll read the description of it for you. So, while this pewter stein holds at least a sip's worth of portable alcohol, the face adorning it comes alive to sing songs based on the kind of drink. It is not sentient, but it does have a pleasant singing voice. If there are multiple steins in the same room, they will sing together in harmony if they have the same drinks within them. If the alcohol inside the stein is poisoned, the stein will sing slightly off-key, which can be heard following a successful wisdom perception check as determined by the DM. If there are multiple kinds, the stein will alternate between different song types, best determined to sing. Wine, it would sing ballad. Rums, it would sea shanty, and ale, it would be singing a standard drinking song. This is something that it's incredibly simple. It's almost more just a thing to have for fun role-playing elements, but it really only has one use in terms of actually helping you as the regular player, in terms of that whole, if your drink is poisoned, you can detect it. But it's one of those things that I think just adds a little bit of levity to your moments when you're actually not engaged actively in role. And so that's why this gets on my list as is one of my top 10 items in the Griffon Saddlebag volume. Next up on the list is going to be the frostbitten buckler, which is a uncommon armor shield, which does require attunement. This has been commonly known, I've seen this going around on the internet, people have been calling this the Shield of Agathis, however it is known as the Frostbitten Buckler. This icy shield is 3 charges and regains all of them each day at dawn. When you get hit by an attack, with a melee attack, you can expend one of the shield's charges as a reaction to deal 2d4 cold damage to the attacking creature. After that attack, you gain that same amount of cold damage as temporary hit points, and those hit points can last up to a minute. I can definitely see why this is being called the Shield of Agathis. It's very, very similar to the Armor of Agathis spell. And again, it's just one of those things that in my mind, has a lot of utility. It's a thing that allows you, especially if you're a martial character, to go ahead and have that kind of leaning towards the magic end of things that you don't necessarily get if you're only a martial character. If you're a battle master fighter, you're not going to be experiencing that kind of magic. But magic items like this allow you to do that and see the effects that those kind of spells have and can help determine your mindset when picking new characters in upcoming games. Next up on our list is going to be another magic item which leans more towards the martial classes rather than the spellcasting classes, and that is the Dagger of the Ogre Mage. This, although the name is a dagger, this is also something that requires attunement, and it does qualify as a short sword for regular medium-sized characters in D&D. You get a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls with this magic weapon, and the blade's hilt on this short sword is hollow and can hold up to 3 cantrip spell scrolls. Cantrip scrolls left within the compartment for a minute activate one of the 3 clear gems adorning the grip of the sword. And once activated, you can cast these cantrips at will using your spellcasting modifier, and then if you don't have one, it uses your intelligence modifier as that spellcasting modifier. You automatically have proficiency with these cantrips, and then the blade acts as an arcane focus, and it allows you to perform any somatic components with the weapon as opposed to having a free hand. And then any scrolls contained within the sword are not destroyed after you use them in this way. And then when you cast a cantrip using the sword that deals damage, the sword's damage check changes to match the cantrips for 1 minute or until you end it, which does not require an action. Again, this is another, as I said, this is another one of those magic items which I feel leans very heavily towards the martial classes as opposed to the regular spellcasting classes. This is something you can kind of get your feet wet with some spells again, which is just something I very much enjoy seeing. This is a good way to allow players that can't normally act a certain way in combat to actually get into it. If you're primarily a melee fighter and you're fighting an enemy that is flying around and stuff like that, if you don't have spells or a ranged weapon, it can become a problem, and that's where I think something like this comes in very, very handy. Next up on my list is going to be the Star Metal Ring. It is a rare ring which does not require attunement. This roughly crafted metal ring seems to have an otherworldly pull on other metallic items. While wearing this ring, you can spend 1 hour holding onto an object weighing no more than 25 pounds that is at least 50% metal. If the ring and metallic item are in contact for the full hour, they form a powerful and magically controlling magnetic bond. You can only have one item bound to the ring in this way at a time. While the bound item is within 40 feet from you and unobstructed, you can use a bonus action on your turn to magically pull it up to 20 feet towards you. The returning item bounces harmlessly against creatures and objects as it passes by. This seems like something that would be very good, an example for a rogue that likes to deal with throwing daggers, stuff like that. You can throw your dagger, and then if you have it automatically bound to the ring, just go ahead, bonus action that thing right back to you. Absolutely fantastic. You can even do this, for example, another thing you could do this with is something, in my mind, you could do this with an arrow, even. And then maybe you don't have to worry about doing the whole go out and buy arrows again. I think the stats are something along the lines of 50% of all arrows you fire are lost. But if you already have them bound, perfectly fine. This primarily just seems to be a version of what would be considered the chain of returning that they used in Critical Role that Grog had, which you would attach to Craven Edge and Sword of Kos, and the Dwarven Thrower, so on, so on, so on, so on. But this is a ring form of that. It is a thing that does not require attunement, which I'm very glad. If this required attunement, this would not have made my list. The fact that it does not is what bumps it up and puts it onto that slot. Next item on the list is going to be it's going to be another weapon. It's going to be a longbow, rare, which does require attunement. It's called the Screaming Longbow. Arrows fired from the sickly longbow let out a screeching howl audible for up to 100 feet away as they fly by. Creatures struck by these arrows take an extra 2d4 thunder damage. When you roll a 20 on an attack roll made with this weapon, all creatures within 5 feet of the target must succeed on a DC 15 con save or be deafened for 1 minute. This is another one of those things that I like. It essentially allows you, as a ranged character, you're essentially throwing Thunder Wave at these people just at a distance. If you roll that nat 20, you're almost essentially throwing Thunder Wave. I always like things that deal extra damage on a hit, especially when it's something like a longbow that's ranged. Because if you're doing as the rogue character that's ranged and you're using a bow, you're not necessarily always going to be getting sneak attack with every one of your shots. Now, if this is something that you say you pick up as an arcane archer, you're going to be absolutely beast. Which is another reason I find this to be very fascinating. Because it's so versatile. It can either make you a much more effective member of combat, or it can elevate your combat style to a higher level. which I think is the point of magic items. That either can make you better, or they make you way better. Alright, next thing on the list is going to be the cold snap. This is another weapon. This is a whip, which is rare, and it does, again, require attunement. This icy whip deals an extra 1d4 cold damage to any target it hits. In addition, you have a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with this magic weapon. The whip has 3 charges and regains all of them each day at dawn. When you hit a creature that is not immune to cold damage with this weapon, you can expend one of its charges to force that creature to make a DC 15 Constitution saving throw. On a failure, its speed becomes 0 until the start of your next turn. On a success, its speed is halved instead. Once you attune to this weapon, its normally frigid handle feels warm to the touch. Part of what I love about that is just that last line. Just kind of adds a little extra flavor into it. It's the frigid handle feels warm to the touch once you attune. I love stuff like that where it adds just a little bit to the description to make it more just, yeah. And again, as I mentioned last time with the Screaming Longbow, I love things that just deal extra damage as well. And this isn't a lot. So as a total, just as a whip, this is going to be dealing 2d4 damage, which isn't a lot. It'll be dealing 2d4 plus 1 in total, because you'll have your regular whip damage plus this 1d4 cold, which is why this feels like something that could be very good to use in the beginning. This could be a good magic item to get out early on and then upgrade away from. But the thing that really sells this one for me is its ability with the charges. You do things that are not immune to cold damage. This does not specify resistance, it specifies immune, which means this would be useful against a whole host of different things. What makes that even especially better is it's on a failure, it's 0, and then its speed is halved, even on a success on the saving throw. It would be very beneficial against things that are much faster. For example, if you used this whip on, let's say, you could use this whip on like an ancient dragon. Something that has an amazing flying speed. That speed is even half. Granted, that's still big. That's still a lot. But it's every little bit helps when you're fighting stuff like that. So that's one of those things that just kind of, again, elevates it above, where it has these little extra tweaks. That's why I really like this one. Next up is going to be another weapon, rare, which again requires attunement. This is going to be a light crossbow called Reap and Sow. This is going to be a long one, so let's go ahead and read this. Alright. You gain a +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with this magic weapon. While attuned to the weapon, you can cast the Mending cantrip at will. A special needle-like bolt is magically bound to the crossbow. When fired, the bolt leaves a faint thread of arcane energy behind it and deals force damage instead of piercing. The bolt returns to the crossbow and loads itself after each attack, ignoring the crossbow's normal loading property. This crossbow has 4 charges and regains 1d4 expended charges each day at dawn. When you fire the special bolt from this crossbow and hit a large or smaller creature, you can spend 1 charge to tether that creature to a point on the ground adjacent to it. If the creature attempts to move more than 10 feet away from that point before the end of its next turn, it must succeed on a DC 15 strength saving throw or have its movement speed reduced to 0 until the start of the next turn. If the special bolt is somehow destroyed or lost, the bolt reappears loaded on the crossbow after 24 hours. The weapon is considered to be a mundane, non-magical crossbow while separated from the bolt for longer than a minute. Cursed. Once attuned to this weapon, you must make a DC 12 Wisdom saving throw whenever you attempt to take a short or long rest. On a failure, you are overcome with the urge to craft and are forced to sew, knit, or crochet, or cross-stitch feverishly for at least 1 hour before being able to rest. The curse remains even if the attunement ends, but can be undone by any effect that removes a curse, such as Greater Restoration or Remove Curse. Alright, there's a lot of information to unpack in this one. Let's start at the very, very beginning. First off, +2, it's a +2 light crossbow, which is fantastic. That automatically, you also, next line, you get the Mending cantrip. which I personally have found to be very, very useful in campaigns where I've played as a character. I recently, in this game right here in Baldur's Gate, my character found a broken dagger, which he cast Mending on, restored it to its state, and it has since allowed him to open a few doors in terms of social interactions, just because of what the dagger actually was. Alright, and now the big thing. This weapon deals force damage instead of piercing. Force damage is an amazing thing in D&D. There are so few creatures in Dungeons & Dragons that have resistance or immunity to force damage, and that's part of what makes Eldritch Blast so good, is its ability to deal force damage. The other big thing that this has, it ignores the crossbow's loading property, which, again, if you get up to the point where you get those extra attacks, you can just go ahead and continually just fire off those crossbow bolts as they come back. So if you were a high-level fighter and you have this, you can just go ahead and fire 4 crossbow bolts, just boom, 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 and just absolutely perfect. Each dealing force damage. The 4 charges with the 1d4 regain at dawn. So when you hit the large or the smaller creature, the ability to tether them to the ground. Again, when you have something along the lines that has big movement, or if you're fighting something that would have like the mobile feat, or something like that. This is something that could be very, very valuable in terms of keeping your enemies locked in, especially if it's an enemy that's trying to flee. This would be a perfect opportunity if you're fighting a boss and then they try to run away. It would be a perfect opportunity to expend one of those charges and try to keep them there. I just thought for a second. Okay, yeah, no, never mind. The only big thing that ends up really being a problem is primarily the curse, and then without that magical crossbow bolt, it is considered to be a mundane weapon, so it doesn't have that +2 anymore. So it's primarily the bolt that is magic, not the actual crossbow. The wisdom save in order to knit, so anything like that. That's not really, in my opinion, a huge problem. But it is interesting. One big thing that is interesting in the wording there is it does not state that if you use remove curse or greater restoration to remove that curse, whether or not that breaks attunement to the item. So that is something to keep in mind. That is something that DMs would take into account when they play their games. If my players decided to go ahead and use that to break a curse, I would say, alright, you can keep attunement because you did that. Some DMs I know would rule it differently. But yes, that is Reap and Sow, and there are many reasons that it's made it on the list. Primarily having to deal with its ability to deal force damage as opposed to the traditional piercing damage of a crossbow, as well as its ability to possibly ground an enemy and keep them in place. Next up, we have Fables End. This is a very rare weapon, a mace that also requires attunement. You gain a +1 bonus to attacks and damage made with this magic weapon. Whenever you roll a 20 on an attack roll with Fables End against a large or smaller creature, it must succeed on a DC 15 Charisma saving throw and be banished to its native plane or another plane of existence. At the end of its turn, the target reappears in the space it left or in the nearest unoccupied space if that space is occupied. You banish and score a critical hit against Fey creatures on a roll of 19 or 20 with this weapon. Fey creatures have disadvantage on the saving throw. When a creature is banished in this way, the weapon's center emits a brilliant magenta flash of light. First off, +1 mace. Automatically. Nice. +1 maces in and of themselves for +1 weapons are not super special. However, its ability to, on a critical hit, essentially banish a target, even just for a turn, is incredibly beneficial. Where this could be a problem, though, is if it's one enemy you're fighting. However, anytime if that is the case and it's your party fighting a boss and you end up banishing them just for that round, that gives you 1 round to reposition, set up traps, etc., etc., etc. A thing I would like with this though is maybe just a little bit more to it in terms of damage. Because again, at the core of this is still just a +1 mace. Still just a +1 mace, and you have to roll a critical hit in order for it to do its banishing. For a very rare weapon, I do feel like this is a little on the weaker end, but it's still something that I enjoy giving out in my campaign. Next up on our list is going to be a very rare handaxe weapon, which also requires attunement, called Timber. This magical axe is imbued with a destructive force that builds with each consecutive strike. You have a bonus to attack and damage rolls made with this magic weapon equal to the number of charges it currently has. The handaxe gains 1 charge each time you make a successful attack with it, up to a maximum of 3 charges. When Timber gains its 3rd charge, the built-up force explodes, it loses all charges, and the target takes an extra 3d6 force damage, or 66 if it is made of wood. When this happens, if the target is no more than 1 size larger than you can choose to push it up to 10 feet away from you. Timber's charges last for up to 1 minute. It loses all charges if you make an attack against a new target, make an attack with a different weapon, or miss with an attack using Timber. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack with that one. But what I do really, really love with this is it's a weapon that scales as you use it. The very first attack, it's literally a basic handaxe. It doesn't do anything else, not even a +1 handaxe at that point. Although it would still qualify as magical in terms of overcoming resistances. But it's not a +1 handaxe or anything like that. If you hit with it, it becomes a +1. And then the second time you hit with it, you get your +2, and then up to +3. Once you get that +3, that's when you can deal that extra force damage, and I talked about it earlier. I love force damage. Force damage is an incredibly beneficial thing in D&D because so few things are immune to it. 3d6 force damage is nothing to sneeze at. Again, that does seem a little low for a very rare weapon, but it's 66 if the thing is made of wood. I would almost also rule that as plant-based things. Maybe not necessarily, what are the mushroom things called? I can't even remember. The myonids, or whatever they're called. But if it was, for example, a vine blight, or something like that, I would probably allow that to go. I would probably allow that to persist. But against things like tree ants, stuff like that, it would be amazing. If you're trying, for example, using Timber to, for example, sink an enemy ship, it's be amazing. You're rarely going to miss the side of a boat. So if you just run down there, swing, boom, swing, boom, swing, boom, you can sink a ship very quickly because you'll just obliterate the side. There's a lot of versatility in a weapon like this. The caveats to it is how it does lose its charges. So if you do end up missing one of those attacks, you have to start back over from the bottom with it back. But the likelihood that you'll miss attacks lowers the more charges you get. Which is it's this kind of give and take, which is part of the reason I really like this magic item. And our last item from Griffon's Saddlebags, version 1, is going to be the Stormthrower Harpoon. It is a legendary trident, which again requires attunement. This weapon is a +3 bonus to attack and damage rolls. The trident has a 20-foot chain attached to its handle, which can be used to retrieve the weapon as a bonus action. When you hit with a ranged attack using this weapon, it deals an extra 1d8 lightning damage. This trident acts as a conduit for the sky's ferocious power. Immediately after hitting a target with the trident, you can call down a bolt of lightning upon it, forcing it and all creatures within 5 feet of it to make a DC 17 dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, Creatures take 60-10 lightning damage, or half as much on a success. Creatures have disadvantage on the saving throw if they are submerged in water or wearing metal armor. You are immune to the lightning damage caused by this effect. This feature can't be used if the target is obstructed from the sky, and once this property has been used, it can't be used again until the following dawn. This item also contains a feature known as Impale. You can use an action to try and impale and pull a target towards you. If your target is no more than one size larger than you can make a ranged attack against it using a trident. If you hit, you can attempt to pull that creature towards you by making an athletics check, contested by the target's athletics check. If you succeed, you can pull the creature up to 20 feet towards you, which would be pulling it from 20 feet away from you into melee range, because it only has that 20-foot chain. Alright, let's start from the top. First off, +3 trident. Automatically, woo! +3 weapon movement. It's got that 20-foot chain. It allows you to pull it back from 20 feet away as a bonus action. Anytime you can reclaim a ranged weapon as a bonus action, I love it. And then on top of that, if you hit on that ranged attack, you're dealing that extra 1d8 lightning damage. Now, lightning damage is something that a lot more creatures are resistant to or immune to than, say, force damage, but I still find it very useful. This would be very useful, especially in terms of fighting groups of, say, bandits, war pirates, goblins, etc., etc., etc. Things that you know don't have those and are weaker enemies of your own size. Its feature to call down the 6d10 lightning strike is also amazing. And it doesn't specify whether or not it is a melee attack or a ranged attack. I would rule it as you could do either. So you have the potential there to deal 1d8 lightning damage to a single target, and then it will be a 15-foot cube of 60-10 lightning damage at a DC 17, which for lower CR creatures is going to be harder to hit. So you have the potential to one enemy deal a max of 68 lightning damage, and then the rest a maximum of 60. Although it'll probably be more around 30, just because that's how the law of averages works. The only big thing with that is it specifies that you are immune to lightning damage. Do keep in mind your allies are not. So make sure you keep that in mind if you ever use this magic item. Alright, so those are my top 10 magic items from the Griffon's Saddlebag Volume 1. This is an amazing tool for finding magical items that aren't in the DMG or the player's handbook. It is something I enjoy quite a bit, having the Griffon's Saddlebag as an option. I get a lot of magic items that I decide to use for homebrew. I find on Pinterest and stuff like that, and that is what led me to these. These are available for purchase. This was a thing on Kickstarter, and I believe they are partnered with the Deck of Many. Yes, so this is a thing that is sponsored and partnered with the deckofmany.com. I am not sponsored by the Deck of Many. But Griffon's Saddlebag, there are currently 2 editions of this out, each with 50 their own magic items. I will be doing a video talking about my top 10 from Volume 2. But in the meantime, that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys like this. If you did like this video and you want to see more about how I talk about magic items here, stuff out of the actual books, modules, talk about my favorite monsters, etc., 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 let me know down below. And I will talk up and see all of you guys in our next video.